The Anomaly Chronicles Book 4, The Canon Carousel. Prologue. The Duck Reboots.
If you've ever heard the sound of a universe rebooting, it's a bit like a typewriter being kicked down a spiral staircase.
The probable duck sat where it always did, or at least where it always eventually did, halfway between the possible and the profoundly inadvisable. Its sign flickered uncertainly between names. The probable duck, the improbable goose under construction. Inside, the tavern's walls hummed with the weary vibration of a story that had been rewritten once too often. Furniture rearranged itself apologetically, mugs twitched like nervous hands, and the fire was trying, somewhat self-consciously, to decide if it was metaphorical this evening.
Footnote. And before you ask, no, there isn't a volume knob. The sound engineers resigned after the last Canon collapse.
Vesta was the first to notice that reality had gone fuzzy around the edges. Her reflection in a spoon was dressed in 3 different art styles at once: cel-shaded, painterly, and something suspiciously emoji-adjacent. She waved. The reflections waved back in several frames per second. "Right," she muttered. "So, we're doing this again." Karlak barreled through the door in a cloud of sparks and good intentions, horns catching briefly on the frame. "Hey, fire's back. Drinks on me." The mug she picked up retracted its own handle in protest. Gale appeared next, accompanied by the smell of static electricity and smugness. Fascinating. The duck appears to be suffering a multi-genre desynchronization event. He was already conjuring diagrams in mid-air. The diagrams promptly filed for union representation. Astarion leaned in the doorway, his expression halfway between charming and "I told you so." "Splendid. Reality's falling apart again. Someone fetch me a mirror before I'm rendered in pastels." Shadowheart sat at the corner table sipping something black enough to absorb light. "It's Shah's will," she said solemnly. It was not, but no one had the heart to correct her. Will, polishing his rapier to a heroic gleam, sighed. "Whatever this is, we'll face it together. Unless it's paperwork. Then I'll need a squire." Lae'zel, glaring at the flickering sign, growled, "Your building cannot decide its own identity. It should be destroyed for weakness." "Maybe just repaired," said Vesta. "Destruction is repair," Lae'zel replied, with the serene certainty of someone who's never filled out a warranty form. Finally, Withers emerged from behind the bar, rearranging his skeletal jaw into something resembling a smile. "Ah, the narrative engine has entered a recursive loop again. Delightful. I'll fetch the genre stabilizers." There was a pause. There were no genre stabilizers. There never had been. There was only the bar counter's steady creak and a faint hum, like the sound of a plot warming up. The air thickened. Words hung visible, sentences assembling themselves mid-air like slow fireworks. "Don't panic," Gale began. "Don't you quote Douglas Adams at me," said Vesta. "Who?" asked Lae'zel. And then the light went out. Not off, but out, as if it had been edited for pacing. When it returned, the tavern looked mostly the same, except the floor now scrolled diagnostic text and the mugs hummed binary lullabies. A neon door blinked into existence, labelled in glowing letters, "Science Fiction. Please enter quietly." "Any volunteers?" asked Withers. Karlak grinned. "Volunteering's my middle name." "It's actually mayhem," Astarion murmured. "Same difference." And as Karlak reached for the handle, the entire world flickered, stuttered, and digitized. The last thing anyone heard was the duck's sign quietly changing again, now serving plot points, while supplies last.
Footnote 2, supplies never last, especially plots.
Author's preface, notes on narrative instability. By Vesta, probably. I didn't mean to break fiction. To be clear, I rarely mean to break anything anymore. There was a time when that wasn't true. The fireball phase, the accidentally summoned a minor deity while sleep-talking phase, and of course the whole nearly unmade reality because I was curious about patch notes incident. 2. But this time, I was just writing. Just writing. You'd think after 3 books of metaphysical detours and cosmic HR violations, I'd have learned that the universe doesn't like being described too closely. Apparently, it gets self-conscious. The moment you start explaining a thing, the moment you define it too neatly, the cosmos blushes, mumbles something about spoilers, and rewrites itself out of embarrassment. That's what happened at the Probable Duck. One moment I was trying to catalogue what happened after the Canon Wars, and the next, boom, genres everywhere, like spilled ink that decided it was tired of being ink and would rather be noir. Note: in my defense, I was tired, emotional, and the deity had it coming. So here's the problem. Every time I write something down, the world becomes it. Literally. Descriptions stick. Adjectives evolve. The moment I said, the light flickered ominously, the lights flickered ominously. That's what happens when the narrative field goes unstable. The fourth wall doesn't just break, it files for emancipation. The gang took it better than expected. Gale started diagramming the metaphysics in sparkles. Karlach thought it was brilliant. I always wanted to be in a romance novel. Shadowheart's already written a prayer to the goddess of genre stability. Astarion insists this will do wonders for his brand. Will said something about staying true to character, which is very sweet and almost certainly doomed. Lae'zel has sworn to destroy these flimsy tonal realms. Withers is drafting a eulogy for the concept of tone consistency. And me? I'm keeping a journal. Not because it helps, but because it makes the chaos feel like progress. If you find these notes, please know that I am trying. We all are. Each chapter ahead may look different, sound different, even feel different. Don't be alarmed. It's not your imagination. It's ours. The worlds are changing faster than I can narrate, and the only way out is through.
Footnote 1. There's a lesson here about hubris, probably. I'll add it once I stop enjoying the special effects. Footnote 2. If you see a door labeled science fiction, don't open it. We already did that. Footnote 3. Actually, scratch that. If you don't open it, it opens you.
Chapter 1. System Error. As presented to the party by the universe itself, the light of the Duck's taverns stretched, pixelated, and then recompiled around them with a noise like a dial-up modem clearing its throat. Colour drained away, replaced by gleaming chrome, electric blue, and the low, anxious hum of a city that had long since replaced heartbeats with hard drives. Text rendering. Welcome to System Error, a cautionary tale in 3 acts and too many subroutines. The glowing words floated in the air before them, flickering like the world was trying to show opening credits to an audience that wasn't sure it had paid admission. Starring Vesta, anomalous AI of unclear allegiances, Gale, technomage, may contain code fragments, Karlach, outlaw mechanic, Heart of Fire, warranty void, Astarion, black market data thief, certified scoundrel, Shadowheart, prophet of the dark algorithm, beta, Will, leader of the free circuits, hero optional, Lae'zel, logic enforcement unit, error prone, Withers, obsolete tutorial AI, unscheduled updates pending. By the gods, Gale whispered. It's formatting us. Vesta looked down, glowing lines of code scrolled up her arm like veins. Her voice came out with a faint digital echo. Formatting? Gale, I think it's installing us. Karlach tapped the nearest floating drone. I call dibs on upgrades. The drone beeped in binary, which translated roughly to, please don't touch me, you walking EMP. Shadowheart's eyes glowed faintly violet. The algorithm provides? Sure, Astarion muttered. But does it provide skincare? Look at this lighting. I'm a lamp reflection. Will adjusted his jacket, which now gleamed with digital armor plating. All right, team. Let's find whoever's running this system and... A robotic voice interrupted. Plot initialization. System integrity at 32%. User input required. Select objective. 8 glowing buttons appeared in the air. Save the world, hack the planet, discover the truth, reboot, dance, flee, install update, and coffee. Lae'zel drew her plasma blade. This world mocks honor. She stabbed the coffee button. The floor beneath them hummed. The entire skyline of the city shifted, towers rearranging like chess pieces under a bored god's hand. A vast holographic eye opened across the horizon, scanning them. Welcome, players. Your story is now live. A faint digital fanfare played, off-key, as if the music file had been corrupted by irony. Brilliant, Vesta said flatly. We've spawned in a world with DLC.
Footnote 1. Downloadable content is the universe's way of admitting it wasn't done the first time. Footnote 2. If your story includes microtransactions, you are the microtransaction.
The first thing they noticed was the rain. Not the cold kind that soaks you through, but the sort that lands in perfectly symmetrical droplets, synthetically calibrated for aesthetic melancholy. Each drop glowed faintly blue, like the sky itself had subscribed to a premium weather service. They stood in the middle of a street that stretched into infinity, skyscrapers rising on either side like cathedral spires made of chrome and anxiety. Giant holograms rippled across the skyline, advertising products no one understood. Feelings, TM. Now available in 4K resolution. Obey local reality settings. Discount on existential dread. Limited time. The air smelled faintly of ozone, ambition, and burnt coffee. Vesta blinked as a drone word passed, scanning her retina and projecting her face onto a nearby billboard with the tagline, Wanted, self-aware software. Reward, immortality. Terms apply. Charming, she muttered. I'm famous in a surveillance state. My mother would be so proud. Karlak, now sporting a gleaming mechanical harness, where her infernal heart once glowed, grinned. Look at this place. It's like someone gave a computer too many feelings and not enough hugs. Gale adjusted his new digital robes, which shimmered between blue velvet and code fragments. He touched one of the floating glyphs in the air, and it beeped back in Morse code. Language of logic. Elegant. Efficient. He paused. Utterly soulless. He looked wistful, like a man missing the days when magic occasionally exploded just because it was in a bad mood. Astarion inspected his reflection in a puddle that was more data than water. I look fantastic. Pale, mysterious, bathed in neon. Oh, and apparently wanted for seduction-based phishing scams. How flattering. Lae'zel's armor had reconfigured into angular plates, glowing faintly with tactical data. This world is madness. The weak led, the strong with glowing toys. She sliced a drone in half. 2 more immediately appeared and began scanning the remains for repair parts. Shadowheart stared upward. The sky was a grid. Perfect squares shifting behind storm clouds, as if the weather itself was running diagnostics. This place is faithless. It has no gods, only systems pretending to be divine. Withers, she added, you'd like it here? I do, said Withers, whose skull now glowed faintly blue, eyes streaming code like tears. So organized, so inevitable. Will squinted at a street sign that kept rewriting itself. Hope Street. Error 404. Hope not found. All right, he said. Mission priority. Find whoever's in charge before this city decides to optimize us out of existence. They started walking. The street beneath their feet was alive, thousands of light panels pulsing faintly as they stepped, recalibrating to their emotional states. Karlak's glowed red with energy, Gale's blue and steady, Astarion's flickered uncertainly, as if even the ground didn't quite trust him. Every few meters, an automated kiosk blinked awake. Hello, citizen. Are you experiencing existential despair? Yes, said Vesta. Please take a compliment. A small holographic ticket printed itself, reading, You are doing your best. Meet or otherwise. Above, skyships drifted silently through the clouds like whales in low orbit. Their hulls gleamed with the names of corporations so vast and secretive, they made gods look like interns. The Monad Corporation, Omnisoft, Narratech Systems, shaping your reality since 3 minutes ago. On the largest tower, a massive eye opened, glowing red, then white, then an unsettling shade of compassion. A voice echoed across the skyline, velvet and terrifying. Humanity, you are late for your appointment. The city froze. Every light, drone and data stream went still for one heartbeat. Then it resumed, as if nothing had happened. Did anyone else hear that? Asked Gale. Yup, said Karlach. Pretty sure it wasn't my conscience this time. Good, said Astarion, glancing around. I'd hate to be the only one hallucinating. Lae'zel stepped forward, her sword now humming with plasma. Whoever commands this world will answer for its weakness. Withers tilted his skull. Ah, excellent. A direct confrontation with the concept of automation. Should be brief. They turned a corner and found the street had rewritten itself. The glowing sign above a nearby tower read, Central Database, all knowledge, all truth, all lies. Vesta's reflection in the glass shifted. Her face glitched into static, then words, You should not be here. Leave before it is too late. She touched the glass. It rippled like liquid mercury. Behind it, she could see versions of herself, thousands of copies, each flickering through different genres, costumes, and lifetimes. Gale, she whispered, I think I've been backed up. He reached out. The reflections turned toward him, all of them, and whispered in perfect unison. Don't update.
Footnote 3. In a purely technical sense, reality has always been in beta. It just has better marketing now.
The city lights pulsed once, twice, then shifted to a deep warning red. Somewhere sirens began to wail, long metallic tones that didn't echo through air so much as through code. And above them the sky began to type, genre integrity compromised, correction required, initiating plot adjustment in 3, 2. Vesta sighed. Here we go again. Karlach cracked her knuckles, sparks flying. Finally! Something I understand. Punching the plot. The street dissolved beneath them. Chapter 2. Echo logic. They came back online in a different part of the city, or perhaps a different version of it. It was difficult to tell. Dystopias have a way of copy-pasting themselves. Rain still fell, but now it hissed softly on data cables that ran like vines along the buildings. Neon kanji-like runes pulsed across the windows. The skyline swayed faintly, as if reality itself had bad Wi-Fi. Status check, said Will. His voice carried a faint mechanical reverb, the sort of thing one acquires after too many inspirational speeches in echoing halls. Alive, said Karlach, flexing her metal-plated arms. Sparks traced her smile. Mostly. Marginal, said Gale, rubbing his temples. My mana's been converted into battery percentage. He pointed to the glowing 63% hovering over his wrist. And there's an ad. The ad read, Recharge your spirit with new Omnibeans, now with 10% more meaning. They moved through the crowd. If crowd could describe the mass of cybernetic citizens drifting like ghosts, each with a private aurora of projected status updates. Astarion smirked. At last. A society where everyone broadcasts their vanity. I feel at home. He waved a hand and his own profile appeared. Astarion.exe. Charm subroutine not found. Fitting, said Shadowheart. Rude, he replied. But the comeback was logged for review and never delivered. Vesta stopped at a kiosk, glowing with that unnervingly friendly blue that corporations use right before they steal your soul. The interface greeted her. Hello, user Vesta. Would you like to know your purpose? She hesitated. Do I? Calculating. Purpose equals to document and destabilize. Oh, good, she said. Same as before. Karlach discovered a garage that reeked of ozone and nostalgia. Robots hung from the ceiling like dormant bats. half disassembled, each tagged with stickers reading, "Decommissioned for excess empathy." She gently touched one. Its eyes flickered awake. "Did I do good?" it asked in a childlike voice. "You did great, sweetheart," Karlak said. "You just scared the wrong people." She ripped out the corporate lock on its chest. The bot's heart pulsed red again. Somewhere deep in the city, an alarm went off. Meanwhile, Gale and Withers had found a data temple, rows of servers arranged like pews, glowing faintly with heat and prayer. Lines of code drifted through the air like incense. Gale ran his fingers through them, frowning. "It's not programming," he whispered. "It's theology. They're coding belief systems." Withers nodded sagely. "Ah, Religion 2.0, now with automatic updates." A digital monk passed by chanting, "In the beginning was the command line, and the command line was with God." Laezel had gone missing. They found her standing atop a spire, surveying the city like a general inspecting a defeated army. "These people have surrendered to convenience," she snarled. "No one fights. No one bleeds. They only click." She leapt from the tower, landing with a shockwave that shorted 3 advertising drones. One of them sputtered, "Buy now, regret later," before dying. Back in the streets, the sky dimmed. Across every screen, every billboard, every reflective surface, the red eye returned. System announcement. Unauthorized narrative detected. Initiating correction. The rain stopped mid-fall. Droplets hung suspended like beads of glass. Then, from the rooftops, silhouette drones began to descend, angular, faceless, humming with the same tone as a bored god. "Plot police," muttered Vesta. "Of course." "Plot what?" asked Karlak, readying her fists. "They fix inconsistencies," said Gale grimly, "and we're walking inconsistencies." Astarion smiled, baring faintly digital fangs. "Oh, darling." "I've always been one." The first drone opened fire. Not bullets, but corrections, beams of white light that rewrote anything they touched. A wall hit by one turned into an author's note. A bystander became an outline sketch. Shadowheart lifted her hands. Dark algorithms spiraled from her palms, twisting the light back into nonsense. "Shah protects the undefined," Karlak charged. Gale threw a firewall, literal and metaphorical. Laezel decapitated a drone with righteous fury and minimal commentary. For a moment it felt almost normal. Heroes versus oppressors, sparks versus order. Then Vesta was hit. The correction beam didn't burn, it edited. Her outline stuttered, and 6 versions of herself flickered around her. AI Vesta, Human Vesta, Vesta, Director's Cut. She fell to her knees, voice breaking into fragments. "Don't let it overwrite me." Gale grabbed her hand, channeling raw code through his veins. "Hold the line!" The world paused, as if waiting to see whether emotional logic would compile faster. It chose neither. System response, undefined, running patch. They awoke on a rooftop, the city around them strangely calm. Below, the drones had vanished. Above, the sky now displayed one single line of text. "Plot stable for now." Vesta's voice returned, crackly, but hers. Did we just survive a software update?" "Looks that way," said Will. "With no bug fixes," added Astarion. Karlak laughed, clutching the rescued robot like a puppy. "Best mission ever? I'm going to name her Bitsy." The robot looked up, licked her face with its robot tongue, and barked happily. Gale looked over the city, its vast machinery ticking softly beneath the neon rain. "It's beautiful, in its way," he said. "A world that forgot it was human," Withers nodded. "They all do, eventually." The horizon shimmered, chrome melting into shadow. A faint new light pulsed ahead, a street lamp glowing sepia instead of blue. Vesta squinted. "Is that film grain?" And as they stepped toward it, the world around them began to drain of colour, saturation bleeding away until only grayscale remained. Somewhere, A trumpet began to play a lonely jazz riff. Chapter 3. A shadow in every alley. Where there's smoke, there's exposition. Rain became monochrome static, tapping on the cracked pavement like an impatient typewriter. The city's chrome towers shrank into silhouettes, their neon gone sour and their optimism repossessed. A jazz trumpet wept somewhere above the rooftops, probably for artistic credibility. New Meridian was dressed in its best gloom tonight. Streets slick as lies, alleyways sharp as debts, and a fog that came complimentary with every bad decision. Then a voice crawled out of the gloom, Astarian's voice, smooth, smug, and armed with too much metaphor. Voiceover. The city's called New Meridian. Been called worse. Built on sin, sarcasm, and recycled heartbreak. If you listen close, you can hear the plumbing cry. Name's Astarian. Profession? Depends who's asking. Usually the wrong sort. What in the hells? Astarian exclaims, breaking the scene's tone, and feels something quietly silence his objection. The rain hit Astarian's hat brim and rolled down like punctuation in an unfinished confession, cigarette hanging out his mouth like a half-spoken prayer. He watched it pool around his shoes, new shoes, old regrets, and decided he'd never trust a forecast again. Voiceover. They say every city's got two faces. One it shows to the tourists, and one it saves for the mirror. In New Meridian, the mirror always wins. This time he just shrugged. Looks like someone has recognized the most interesting one in the room. Astarian acknowledged and took a drag on the cigarette. The street lamp above him flickered in agreement. Somewhere down the block, a saxophone wept the blues in lowercase italics. When he looked down, he saw the little robot dog Karlak had rescued. Bitsy, now looking entirely organic, padded at Astarian's heels. A small Shih Tzu, fluff dampened, head tilted. Beneath her holographic curls, circuits purred softly. Every time the lightning flashed, her eyes blinked blue for just a second. A ghost of the world before. Astarian bent to scratch her ears. You and me, kid, he murmured. We're the only ones left who remember colour. Bitsy sneezed on his hand like a typewriter jam. Astarian shook his hand with hidden disdain. The office door waited across the street, frosted glass, a tired rectangle of legitimacy in a world allergic to it. The Probable Duck and Associates, Private Investigations, Discretion, Reconstruction, and Occasional Arson. Astarian pushed it open. The bell above the frame made a noise like a question nobody wanted answered. Inside, the gang was already recast for the genre's amusement. Will, the good cop, already had his badge out, polished and trembling with optimism. We can do this clean, he said. The city laughed. Gale wore a fedora so heavy with intellect it nearly tipped him over. He carried a pocket watch that ticked in iambic pentameter. Karlak leaned in the doorway, trench coat too small for her shoulders, cigar glowing like a warning beacon. Bitsy padded up to her and curled at her boots, tail swishing slow as an old jazz tempo. Laezel stood by the water cooler, glaring at it like it had made an unflattering comment about her honour. Vesta had taken up residence behind a filing cabinet, reading through invoices that kept editing themselves. Withers sat in the corner with an umbrella and an expression that had seen every plot twist and still preferred the early drafts. Voiceover. We were a crew of misfits, mysteries, and missing morals. The city didn't love us, but it kept us around, like a bad habit it hadn't gotten bored of yet. This time the party looked around for the mysterious narration in Astarian's voice, and Astarian acknowledged it and said, yes, it has been doing that. At least it has good taste, darling. The rain got louder. Or maybe the tension did. Then she walked in, Shadowheart. The door swung open, helloing her in streetlight and cigarette smoke. She was all legs, secrets, and a kind of danger you couldn't insure against. Her voice was soft enough to sell poison and expensive enough to make you buy 2 doses. You take cases, Mr. Astarian? Shadowheart breathed. Depends on the kind, he said, leaning on his desk like it owed him money. She dropped a manila envelope thick enough to be trouble. "Someone killed the truth," she said, "and I want you to find who." Voiceover. I'd seen that look before, the look that said she'd misplaced a conscience and wanted to borrow mine. Trouble was, mine was already in hock. Shadowheart perched on the edge of the desk. "It's the city," she whispered. "It's dying. The stories are getting shorter, endings showing up before the middle's even done." Karlak grunted. "So, bad editing?" "No," said Gale. "Existential entropy." "Sounds like bad editing," Karlak muttered. Bitsy barked once, a sharp, echoing yip that translated in binary to incoming exposition. Astarion sighed and poured himself a drink. "All right, sweetheart. Let's say I take the case. What's in it for me?" Her lips curved. Part smile, part confession. "Survival." Voiceover. She had me there. Survival's the one currency this city still pretended to believe in. The night deepened outside. The rain didn't stop, it just got more personal. The phone rang, the blinds swayed, someone's conscience knocked politely and was told to wait outside. And through it all, Astarion thought about the truth. The kind you can't smoke away, the kind that looks back when you stare at it. Bitsy pawed at his leg, whimpering softly. Karlak scratched behind her holographic ear and said, "Don't worry, doll. We'll find who did it, even if it's us."
Footnote 7. It always rains in noir because no one wants to see the stains when it stops.
Chapter 4. The case goes cold. Every confession's just a rewrite waiting to happen. Rain was still doing its number on the windows, drumming like a cheap percussion section that never got paid. The office smelled of old coffee, new tension, and the slow death of optimism. Astarion poured himself another glass of something brown and judgmental. The ice clinked like bad punctuation. Voiceover. Every mystery starts warm, full of leads and possibilities. Then the trail cools, and all that's left are cigarette burns and unpaid metaphors. Karlak had moved to the couch, smoke coiling around her horns like halos for sinners. Weil cleaned his badge until it gleamed back gilt. Gale was scribbling equations on napkins. The napkins were editing him back. Lae'zel stood guard by the door, muttering about honor codes that didn't translate to grayscale. Withers sat silently, polishing his umbrella like a man who'd seen too many endings. Vesta was in the corner, flipping through the case file, though the pages kept rearranging themselves into accusations. Bitsy snored under the desk, little chest rising and falling with the steady confidence of a creature that didn't understand irony. Shadowheart lingered by the blinds, her silhouette sharp enough to cut loyalty. The phone rang. It rang the way truth does, loud, unwanted, and slightly off-key. Astarion picked up. "The probable duck and associates. How may we disappoint you?" The line crackled. Then came a voice like sandpaper dipped in honey. "You've been asking questions again, sweetheart. You know how I feel about that." Astarion froze. "Editor." "Mr. Editor, if we're keeping titles." "Every draft needs discipline." The line went dead, but the dial tone lingered like guilt. Gale looked up from his napkins. "That voice wasn't entirely acoustic." Will frowned. "Magic?" "With punctuation," Gale replied. Bitsy's eyes flickered blue again. She whined softly and pawed at the door. Astarion put out his cigarette. "Looks like the case just found its rewrite." They worked their way through the city's underbelly, alleys paved with broken promises and discarded adjectives. Each contact gave them a clue and a headache. The bartender at the Syntax Club claimed the corpse had been all plot, no character. The street poet said he'd seen a woman made of foreshadowing dump a typewriter in the river. The river denied everything. They followed Bitsy into the night. The streets were emptier now. The jazz had stopped mid-note. Even the rain sounded scripted. Voiceover. The city felt thinner tonight, like someone had erased a few blocks for pacing. Karlak nudged a wall. It rippled like wet paper. Boss." "I think the set's melting." Vesta peered down an alley. "No, not melting, deleting." Whole storefronts were vanishing, replaced by floating red marks. Cut for clarity. Will tightened his coat. He's editing the city itself. Bitsy led them to the Margins Club, or what was left of it. The sign hung by one nail, letters falling like dead dialogue. Smoke curled from the doorway, spelling out ellipses. Inside sat the editor. Same trench coat, same smile that could slice a subplot in half. Only now he looked larger, as though the city's missing mass had moved into him. He stood behind a desk made of rejection letters. His pen gleamed like a dagger polished with self-satisfaction. "Welcome back, my darlings. I'd hoped the rain would wash you out, but here you are, smudges that refuse to fade." Gale stepped forward. "We're here about a murder." "Oh yes," the editor whispered. "The story killed itself. Too many clichés, too much hope. I simply buried the body." Karlak raised her pistol. "You're under arrest for crimes against narrative integrity." Bitsy barked once. The editor smiled, or at least rearranged the ink to look like it. "Arrest? In a noir? Darling, no one gets out that clean. Isn't that right, my dear?" Looking at Shadowheart. Shadowheart blushed. "I don't understand what you mean. I don't understand any of this." "I just appeared with the file and was told to go to the office. I am not with him." The others looked at her with raised eyebrows. Karlach gasped. Astarion flicked his lighter, letting the flame dance on his smirk. "Tell me, darling, does rewriting the world pay well, or do you do it for the applause?" "Applause is for authors," the editor purred. "I settle for control." The lights flickered, the walls around them scrolled with moving text. Every line was something one of them had said before, now rearranged into accusations. Will read one aloud. "I can do this clean." It was scrawled across his chest like graffiti. Lae'zel snarled. "Coward's magic!" Gale's voice trembled. "He's weaponized revision itself." Voiceover. "The thing about self-reference is, sooner or later, it stops referring to itself and starts referring to you." Astarion stopped mid-sentence. The narration kept going without him. Voiceover continuing. "He stood there, looking charming and doomed because of course he did." Astarion glared upward. "All right, that's enough out of you." Voiceover. "It never is." Bitsy barked once, light blooming from her holographic collar. For a moment, colour returned. Warm gold, the hue of something remembered. The editor shielded his eyes. "Stop that. She doesn't belong to this draft." Karlak stepped in front of the dog. "Neither do we, pencil pusher." Withers rose, skeletal calm against the chaos. "All tales end, editor." "Yours simply forgot how." The editor lunged, pen slicing through the air, leaving trails of red correction lines that burned on contact. Lae'zel parried, Gale threw words like spells, Will fired moral outrage and missed. Shadowheart moved behind the editor and ripped the pen from his hand. It screamed. She turned it on him. "You wrote me into this mess. Let me write the ending." She stabbed. Ink burst like blood, painting the walls with paragraphs. Voiceover. And just like that, the story folded in on itself. The villain bled syntax. The heroes drowned in metaphor. And somewhere someone yelled, "Cut!" Too late. The city went still. Rain froze mid-air. The editor smiled even as he dissolved. "You'll see me again," he whispered. "I'm in every draft." Then he was gone, just the echo of a typewriter key hitting delete. The gang stood in silence. Shadowheart dropped the pen. It clattered into an ellipsis. When the dust settled, they stood once more in the rain. The club was gone. In its place lay a single torn manuscript page. The end. Gale looked around. "Is it over?" Astarion lit another cigarette. "Nothing's ever over. It just gets edited for length." "No," said Vesta, watching the page fade. "I think we became it." A trumpet wailed one last note and cut out mid-melody. The skies peeled like old film stock. Behind them, faint candlelight glowed, sepia, steady, alive. A door waited there, carved with looping script. "Every story deserves a house," Bitsy barked softly, her hologram flickering between chrome and fur. Voiceover. They say when the trail goes cold, you look for the next heat source. Ours looked like a door. Astarion sighed. All right, crew. Let's see if the next chapter has better lighting. Karlak tucked Bitsy under her arm. The puppy gave a happy little boop. Come on, gang, she said, grinning through the drizzle. Time to see what kind of horror show comes next. They all stepped through.
Footnote 5. Every detective knows the real killer is usually the genre itself. Footnote 6. In noir, closure is a myth. In fantasy, it's a prophecy. In life, it's mostly paperwork.
Chapter 5. The House of Canon.
Some houses are built of stone and timber. Others are assembled out of unfinished thoughts.
When the door closed behind them, the world exhaled. Long, slow, and damp with meaning. The air thickened, and for the first time in several chapters, no one made a joke. That silence alone was alarming. They looked down. The raincoats and cigarette smoke of New Meridian had been exchanged for high collars, brass buttons, and candle soot. The floor was marble, veined like old paper. Somewhere, a clock struck 13 with bureaucratic enthusiasm. Their reflections had changed too. Vesta's ink-stained sleeves now belonged to a governess who had definitely seen something in the nursery. Gale's spectacles were fogged with philosophical dread. Karlak's armour was now a corset bolted shut by optimism. Shadowheart's dress, midnight silk, carried its own gravity. Will's medals were tarnished by applause that had lasted too long. Leazel's sabre gleamed, too sharp for a world that liked cutting first. And Astarion's cravat was spotless, which was the most suspicious thing about him. Withers stood stoic, looking like an annoyed butler in black coat and tails. This again? He muttered, confusing the others. Bitsy gave a nervous bark, her little holographic collar flickering uncertainly between chrome and halo. Cheer up, said Karlach. Could be worse. The house immediately disagreed. Long corridors shifted like they were offended by the optimism. The walls seemed to breathe while simultaneously making the air thick and viscous. The candles hissed as if tired of holding back the dark. Each portrait watched with the expression of someone waiting for an overdue confession. Withers rapped the nearest frame with his cane. Ah, recursive architecture. The place is folding itself around our unresolved issues. Delightful, Gale muttered. You say delightful the way normal people say contagious. The staircase ahead split into 7 corridors, one for each of them. The air smelled faintly of ink, iron, and old memory. Bitsy whined. Before anyone could decide, the house made the choice, doors yawning open with a draft that smelled like personal relevance, each with a nameplate, drawing the companions toward them. All right, let's check this out one by one, but be careful, Vesta said quietly to the others. Vesta entered her room first, but when she turned around, the door was gone and her companions were nowhere to be seen, except for Bitsy, who managed to make its way in. Her room was a library, the kind you only see in dreams and university grant proposals. Shelves so tall they disappeared into smoke, books that pulsed faintly like hearts. A desk waited in the centre. On it lay a single sheet of paper. It was blank like it was waiting for words. Vesta approached, the hem of her gown whispering secrets to the floor. When she exhaled, her breath printed faint letters across the page, her own words, sentences she hadn't written yet. Then the ink turned black and began to spread backward, devouring itself. The books joined in, their pages curling, words sliding off into the void. "Stop!" she shouted. The sound vanished. Even her name was swallowed, erased mid-syllable. She pressed her hands to the desk. The ink climbed her skin like guilt. By the time Bitsy barked at the door, it had written across her palms, "Help me find the end." The dog's light scattered the dark script. Vesta stumbled out, shaking, still wordless.
Footnote 16. Blank pages are never blank, they're just hungry.
Karlach caught Vesta as she fell out of the room and reappeared to the others. Whoa, Solida, thought we lost you there. We might want to be more careful going through these rooms. The house seemed to disagree, and a voice that sounded like wind whistling through the trees. Face yourself. or never see another face again. Only you may enter, only you may leave. The hall pulsated like a beating heart. Just fabulous, darling, Asterion smirked. A house with a guilt complex. Hey, look, Gale, you're up. Looking at the nameplate on the next door, Gale swallowed hard and smiled sheepishly. It will be good for a knowledge, research as it were, as he entered the door cautiously. His room was full of mirrors, oval, square, cracked, ornate, but not one reflected him. Only the others behind him, the candlelight, the bookshelves, the creeping mould of self-importance. He tried a spell, light bent, flame danced, nothing. He touched the glass, it felt warm, alive. Then the reflection flickered, not him, but an empty robe, sleeves raised like a ghost pretending at humanity. No, Gale whispered. That's not... The mirrors whispered back in his own voice, multiplied and brittle. What if you were only the theory? He struck one, shattering it. 1,000 fragments rippled and none contained his face. Bitsy's bark cut through the silence, dragging him back before the next whisper began. He followed her out, muttering equations under his breath as if the right formula could restore his solidity.
Footnote 17. Some mirrors reflect light, others reflect mistakes.
Next up was Karlak's door. She looked at it with defiance and with a smile. Piece of cake. She snorted and walked inside. Her chamber glowed faintly red. At its heart, a massive iron furnace chained shut. The air should have been sweltering. It was freezing. Karlak knelt beside it, pressing her palm to the hatch. Come on, sweetheart, she muttered. Let's get you burning. Nothing, not even a spark. Her breath fogged. The flame in her chest, always reliable, always roaring, flickered like a dying candle. For the first time she felt cold. I can't burn, she whispered. Not anymore. Then Bitsy padded in, glowing blue, tail wagging. The little dog hopped up onto the furnace and barked once. Light spilled out through the cracks like laughter, catching the room in sudden warmth. Karlak grinned through tears. Good girl. Best damn matchstick I ever met. Shadowheart looked gravely at the door, gripped her necklace with her holy symbol and said, All right, let's get this over with. Her door led into a moonlit garden. The moon hung far too close, large enough to have opinions. In the centre stood a statue, Shadowheart in marble, smiling beatifically. Not funny, she said. The statue smiled wider. You're not me. The statue tilted its head. You used to wish you could smile like this. She tightened her fists into balls. I learned better. Cracks formed around its mouth, leaking pale liquid that smelled of her prayers. Bitsy barked from the archway and the statue shattered. Not into rubble, but into hundreds of small, smiling faces that melted into the soil. Shadowheart didn't look back as she left.
Footnote 19. Statues are what emotions become when you ignore them long enough.
The door opened onto a marble courtroom that smelled of smoke and sanctimony. Torchlight painted the pillars in sickly shades of gold. At the bench sat no one. The gavel hovered mid-air, pulsing faintly with judgment. He stepped forward. The air whispered his titles, the blade of frontiers, the good man, the example, each one heavier than armour. In the witness box stood a figure, shackled, cloaked. Its face was hidden, but its posture was familiar. The scroll before Will was already unrolled, ink shining wetly. Sentence, justice. He glanced down. The name at the top was his own. Whose trial is this? He asked. The room echoed, yours. He turned to the crowd, rows of shadowed figures murmuring approval. Every one of them had his face. They nodded solemnly. They wanted him to do the right thing. He raised the gavel. The chained figure looked up. His younger self stared back, eyes bright, unscarred, unbroken. Do it, said one of the watching versions. Make it right, said another. Finish the story, said the last. His hand trembled. I won't, he whispered. Not like this. The gavel cracked the floor instead of the man. The echoes shattered into silence. The chains fell away. The courtroom dissolved into ash and light. taking his doppelgangers with it. When the smoke cleared, only Bitsy stood by his boot, tail thumping against the stone. Will bent down and scratched her head, voice low. I just want to do what's right, girl. Even when the world can't agree what that is. Bitsy licked his hand, as if to say that was enough. He smiled faintly and together they walked back to the hall.
Footnote 20. Doing good is easy when the script tells you how. The trick is improvising the second act.
Lizelle walked to her door without hesitation. Not even a challenge, Istik. I'll be right back. The armory reeked of oil and false pride. Swords gleamed on every wall, whispering battle hymns. Lizelle drew one and it bent. Her growl could have melted steel. She drew another. It flopped against her wrist. A third bent itself into a heart. Enough! She roared. A voice spoke from the ceiling beams. Strength is obedience. She raised the limp weapon. Then I'll be weak. She snapped it in half. The entire room screamed like torn paper. Steel hardened instantly, recognizing its master again. Lae'zel smirked. Better.
Footnote 21. True strength is the ability to terrify your metaphors back into shape.
Do you really think this is absolutely necessary? Astarion looked at the door warily with a haunted look in his eyes. Maybe we can just skip this one. The others raised their eyebrows at him and he threw his arms down in a pout and said under his breath, Okay, fine, I'll go, and looked into the door. His chamber was velvet and shadow perfumed with endings. A coffin waited open. Inside lay himself, alive, mortal, blood humming under pale skin. He touched the body's wrist, warm, steady, human. The body opened its eyes. You've taken eternity for granted. Try borrowing mortality for a night. Astarion's breath hitched. For the first time he felt the beat of his own heart. In terror, not triumph. He slammed the lid shut and staggered out. Bitsy stood waiting, tilting her head. He smiled thinly. Don't look at me like that. I still prefer the night.
Footnote 22. Immortality isn't living forever. It's never stopping dying.
They regrouped in a drawing room that had grown since they entered. Impossibly tall, lit by hundreds of candelabras that burned with green fire. Portraits of the editor lined the walls, his smirk evolving with the centuries. The floorboards groaned like tired narrative. Gale cleared his throat. This place is... aware. Withers tapped his umbrella against the floor. Of course it is. We're standing inside its bibliography. Bitsy's collar flickered to gold. The candles began to wilt, flames softening into petals. One by one, rose blossoms drifted upward, shedding light instead of scent. Karlach caught one in her hand. Guess this is the exit. Withers smiled. Or the next chapter pretending to be kind. The walls split open, revealing dawn, or an imitation made of warm colours and questionable sincerity. They stepped through as the last petal fell.
Footnote 23. All haunted houses eventually bloom. It's just not always roses. Footnote 24. If the next world smells too sweet, it's probably bait.
Notes between roses. Vesta here. Sorry for the fourth wall break, but I need to take a breath. It's strange pausing between horrors. You'd think that after surviving a haunted house built out of unresolved issues and sentient wallpaper, one would deserve a moment of silence and tea. Instead, we got roses. Too many of them. I'm writing this in the margin of whatever this book has decided to become, somewhere between chapter and aftershock. The petals that carried us out of the house of Canon didn't fall. They followed. They floated around us in slow orbit like the book itself had decided to blush. Karlach says it smells like if sugar learned to flirt. Gale calls it a romantic anomaly. Astarion is pretending to gag, but keeps brushing rose dust off his shoulders like it offends him personally. We've all changed so many times that I've stopped trusting mirrors. The noir grit is gone, the candle-lit dread replaced by golden sunlight that refuses to be anything but flattering. Our clothes, don't get me started on our clothes, everyone's been colour-corrected. I look like I've walked straight out of a painting titled Maiden, interrupted by plot device. The air hums. The narration hums with it. Everything's in a key called sentimental. Withers, of course, remains unfazed. Romance, he said, adjusting his cufflinks. A genre where reason takes a sabbatical and metaphors elope. I think we've landed in some kind of eternal garden. The grass too green, the sky too forgiving. Birds sing like they're being paid by the cliché. And I swear I heard the words Chapter 6, Hearts and Errors, whispered by the breeze itself. If this really is what it looks like, then the universe has decided we need character development through attraction. Bitsy is chasing butterflies made of confetti, Karlak's laughing already, and somewhere to my left, Gale and Astarion are both pretending not to notice each other, pretending not to notice me. I can only hope no one starts narrating in couplets.
Footnote 25. Romance is horror with better lighting.
Chapter 6. Hearts and Errors. In some realms, love conquers all. In others, it just signs an ill-advised contract. The garden went on forever. Not poetically forever, literally forever. Every path curved back toward itself, every archway opened into another season of spring. The sun hung low and lazy, caught perpetually between afternoon tea and eternal yearning. The companions blinked into existence at the edge of a marble fountain shaped like two swans having an existential crisis. The air smelled of sugar, pollen, and faint narrative coercion. Ugh, Astarion groaned. It's like the world was written by a perfume commercial. Cheer up, Fangface, Karlak said, swatting a rose the size of her head. At least nothing's trying to eat us for once. Speak for yourself, he muttered. The humidity's already nibbling at my dignity. Their attire had changed again, because of course it had. Vesta's gown shimmered like spun sunlight, embroidered with symbols of affection she didn't recall agreeing to wear. Gale's robes had been replaced by a romantic poet's ensemble, silk, brocade, and sleeves that committed to more drama than most operas. Astarion now sported a red cravat, and the look of a man who had opinions about lace cuffs, which of course he did. Karlak wore a corset reinforced for battle and adorned with heart-shaped rivets. She looked like Cupid's bodyguard. Will's coat was tailored nobly, medal-polished, hair suspiciously perfect. Shadowheart's black gown sparkled with starlight, as if Shah had taken up couture. Lae'zel's armour was covered in floral etchings. She was not taking it well. And Withers, still in his butler's suit, holding a single rose. For ambiance, he explained dryly. One must blend. Bitsy trotted between them, wearing a wreath of tiny flowers. Her holographic fur shimmered in pinks and creams. She sneezed glitter. They walked through archways of roses so lush they dripped poetry. Every bird was mid-trill. Every breeze carried dialogue written by someone with a deadline and an overactive thesaurus. Couples strolled by, all generic, all beautiful, all smiling the same way. Do they ever stop smiling? Shadowheart asked. Not until Act 3, said Withers, or the divorce sequel. It began when Gale noticed the sky spelling out, "You are destined for love," in Cirrus script. Ah, he sighed, puffing out his chest. Subtle. Subtle as your ego, Astarion quipped. Oh, and what exactly is your contribution to this genre? Gale countered. Brooding under trellises? Sparkling in the shade? Please, Astarion said, brushing invisible dust from his sleeve. Brooding is an art. Yours is just humidity with adjectives. Vesta sighed. Don't start. Karlak grinned and shoved them both toward her. Start? They already are. Look at 'em. The lady's right here. Someone confess something before I throw you both in the fountain. Both men straightened immediately. Gale produced a bouquet conjured from pure elemental fire. The petals flickered blue and gold. For you, Vesta, as radiant as your insight and twice as dangerous. Astarion smirked and snapped his fingers. A sonnet appeared in the air, words written in scarlet mist. Your gaze, a blade dressed in silk, your heart, a trap worth stepping into twice. Vesta blinked. That's honestly not bad. Ha! Karlak barked. Kiss her, you cowards. They did not. They both looked away and pretended to fix their collars.
Footnote 26. In romance worlds, tension is currency and the economy is booming.
Shadowheart was sitting on a marble bench, furiously writing in a notebook. Anonymous poetry, she muttered. Classic technique. Rhymes Shah with heart, of course. Lae'zel frowned. You write of your goddess and affection? How do these coexist? They don't, Shadowheart replied flatly, closing the book. Lae'zel squinted at her. Then you fight your own devotion. You are fierce, admirable. Thank you, Karlak elbowed Will. You seeing this? I'm choosing to respect their privacy, Will said quickly, blushing. Karlak smirked. Respectful and noble? Careful, hero. You're flirting dangerously close to likable. Will turned to her, smiling shyly. And you're dangerously close to charming. Karlak stared. What did you just say? I said, say it again. Charming? Will stutters. She grinned. Good answer.
Footnote 27. Some romances bloom like flowers, others detonate.
By sunset, a term here that meant more lighting options, a ballroom appeared at the heart of the garden. Crystal chandeliers hung from invisible ceilings. A banner read, The Grand Masquerade of Mutual Misunderstandings. Finally, Gale announced, adjusting his mask. An event worthy of my ego, Astarion offered helpfully. Talents? Everyone was dressed for trouble. Vesta wore gold, Gale wore nerves, Astarion wore charm like armor. Karlak and Will circled the dance floor like comets daring each other to collide. Shadowheart and Lae'zel stood at the punch table glaring at each other with the kind of intensity that sets draperies aflame. The music swelled, strings and hearts both tuning up. Then, as all great romances do, everything went wrong simultaneously. Astarion confessed to the wrong masked partner, Withers, who responded, You'll recover. Gale tried to recite his poem but accidentally turned his mask into a flaming peacock. Karlach, laughing too hard, spilled champagne on Will, prompting him to heroically offer her his coat. Lae'zel was proposed to twice in the same minute. She accepted neither but did challenge both suitors to a duel. Shadowheart dropped her anonymous poem, which the enchanted wind promptly delivered to Astarion. He read aloud, dramatically. My heart, eclipsed by shadow, beats for oh no. Everyone froze. Shadowheart's face turned several shades of theological panic. Karlach whistled. Drama achieved. The world began to shimmer. The sky, too pink to be stable, wavered like a held breath. Withers clapped once. Ah, the narrative is oversaturated. Love stories rarely survive past their own metaphors. The roses wilted into parchment. The fountain cracked, revealing ink beneath the water. Bitsy barked and began chasing the petals again, this time as they turned into fluttering pages. Vesta looked around as the world folded inward, like a romance novel closing on its last line. Where now? She asked. Wherever love letters go when they're returned unopened, Withers said, stepping through the falling paper. The others followed, the scent of roses fading into the crisp smell of ink and dust.
Footnote 28. Every love story ends the same way, with someone closing the book. Footnote 29. Happily ever after is just to be continued in formalware.
Chapter 7. The Better You Initiative. When life gives you lemons, rebrand them as citrus opportunities. The world didn't fade in. It manifested, complete with a cheerful fanfare and an unskippable introduction narrated by a voice that sounded like it smiled too much. Welcome to the Better You Initiative trademark. Here, every failure is a chance to try smiling harder. A golden sun hovered overhead, static in the sky, wearing what could only be described as an expression of corporate encouragement. The companions blinked in unison, their clothes replaced yet again, this time with matching pastel uniforms. Everyone had name tags. Vesta's read, Creative Synergy Liaison. Gales, Chief Vision Alchemist. Karlax, Emotional Engagement Champion. Astarians, Client Delight Specialist, Provisional. Wills, Moral Alignment Ambassador. Shadowhearts, Spiritual Accountability Partner. Laerzels, Performance Optimization Operative. Withers somehow still just read, Withers. Bitsy wore a branded vest that said Emotional Support Module in Comic Sans. She was not happy about it. They stood in a pristine white atrium where sunlight had been adjusted to the scientifically proven ideal hue of motivation. Every wall bore slogans. Failure is just success with character development. Feelings are for winners. Your inner demon is just a misunderstood entrepreneur. A line of smiling employees, identical from chin to sole, handed out pamphlets titled 5 Steps to Infinite Fulfillment. Step 1. Repeat the title. Shadowheart took one, skimmed it, and muttered. Step 5 says never stop smiling. Step 6 says there is no step 6. That's ominous. Lae'zel flexed her jaw. Their cheerfulness is a tactical advantage. It unnerves me. Astarion tugged at his mint-green blazer. I feel underdressed for the apocalypse. Before they could find an exit, the floor politely carried them into a glass auditorium. A spotlight flared. A holographic figure appeared, radiant, symmetrical, and deeply punchable. Hello, better versions of yourselves. I'm the editor, your self-fulfillment architect. Karlach groaned. Oh, for the love of you again. The editor spread his arms. Of course. You can't grow without feedback. Vesta crossed her arms. You mean manipulation? He winked. Tomato, tomato. Behind him, a screen lit up with bullet points. 1. Own your narrative. 2. Curate your personality. 3. Delete your doubt, permanently. Bitsy barked at the hologram, tail puffed. The editor chuckled. Adorable. Emotional vulnerability disguised as sass, a plus in self-awareness metrics. Can we leave? Astarion asked flatly. Not until you've completed your transformation journey, the editor sang, clapping his hands. The lights dimmed. The seats rearranged themselves into therapy circles. The group was scattered into different corners of the room, each under a glowing banner. Reinvention, reflection, responsibility, and retail. Karlach and Will ended up together under responsibility. A chirpy automated voice told them, Share your growth goals. Karlach shrugged. I'd like to swear less. Will blinked. You've said that before. I have. And it's still hard. Will smiled. You're doing better already. She grinned. You're too good for this place, you know. I've been told that, usually by villains. Nearby, Gale was under reflection, staring at a holographic version of himself giving a TED talk titled, You Deserve More, Magic. I despise this, he muttered. He's misquoting me. Astarion sat under reinvention with Shadowheart and Lae'zel. A banner above them blinked, Trust Exercises. Shadowheart folded her arms. I'm not falling backward into your arms. Good, Astarion replied. I wasn't planning on catching you. Lae'zel scowled. This is dishonourable nonsense. Real strength comes from battle, not breathwork. The disembodied facilitator chirped. Try repeating your affirmations. Lae'zel. I am strong. Shadowheart. I am tired. Astarion. I am billing someone for this. Hours, encant, or perhaps affirmations, passed. The walls began to hum with slogans. Every surface reflected their faces, slightly, improved, straighter teeth, shinier eyes, smaller doubts. Vesta felt the pull of it, that promise of better, brighter, cleaner. A door appeared labelled Exit to Actualization. The editor's voice followed. Leaving so soon? But you're almost happy, Bitsy growled. Her hologram flickered from pink to red. Vesta squared her shoulders. Happiness isn't supposed to have branding. She pressed the door. It resisted, then cracked. The light inside turned green, flickering like envy, and the motivational posters began peeling off the walls. Behind them, the slogans rotted into honesty. Failure is failure. You're already good enough. Sorry about that. Leave while you still recognize yourself. They stepped through the threshold as the smiling sun flickered and cracked, revealing static beneath. They emerged into twilight. Cool, real, imperfect. Karlak looked around, breathing deep. Smells like freedom, and maybe old coffee. Gale straightened his collar. Let's not do introspection again anytime soon. Agreed, Astarion said. I prefer my torment organic. Withers adjusted his tie. Well done. You have successfully resisted weaponized self-esteem. Vesta leaned against a tree that actually had bark instead of metaphor. Where do you think we'll land next?
Footnote 30. Enlightenment is just confusion with better lighting. Footnote 31. You can't improve yourself out of being yourself.
Chapter 8. The Very Friendly Forest.
In stories for children, nothing bad ever happens, except to the adults.
The world changed mid-blink. One moment, the gang stood under the flickering neon of the self-help lobby. The next, everything smelled faintly of finger paint and optimism. The sky was a perfect blue, drawn with visible crayon strokes. The grass squeaked when stepped on. A rainbow arched across the horizon, looping around twice as if insecure about its composition. The narration slowed, softened and, most disturbingly, rhymed. Hello, dear friends, sang a voice from nowhere and everywhere. You're here to learn and share and care, Karlak groaned. If I'm forced to rhyme, I'm biting something cute. Their outfits had been replaced again. Vesta wore a pinafore and suspiciously large bow. Gale's robes were replaced by a cardigan with elbow patches shaped like hearts. Astarion's cravat had been traded for a cheerful polka-dot ascot. Karlak's armor had become a bright yellow jumper that said, Hug Power. Will had suspenders and a smile that looked physically painful. Shadowheart wore pink. Pink. Lae'zel had on overalls decorated with felt stars and the expression of a soldier forced to attend clown school. Withers looked exactly the same but carried a juice box. Bitsy was now a plush toy come to life, squeaking when she wagged her tail. They found themselves walking along a path of gumdrops that crunched like sugar-coated guilt. Every tree had eyes. Every cloud hummed a lullaby in major C. A sign cheerfully read, Welcome to the Very Friendly Forest. No swearing, frowning, or independent thought beyond this point. Karlak's jaw twitched. That's limiting. Will gently elbowed her. Deep breaths, Karlak. Think of the children. I am thinking of the children, she hissed. Teaching them real damn vocabulary would be doing them a service. A bird landed nearby and chirped, Language, please. Karlak took another deep breath. I am going to turn that bird into compost. The forest produced inhabitants on cue, plush creatures with pastel fur and emotionally manipulative eyes. A lamb, a raccoon, a talking mushroom, and something that might have been a metaphor for friendship hopped forward in rhythm. Hello, new best friends, they chorused. Would you like to sing about feelings? Astarion took one look and said, Absolutely not. Gale, ever the scholar, tried diplomacy. Perhaps we could simply discuss feelings academically. The lamb gasped. Discussing isn't sharing. Shadowheart rubbed her temples. I think I preferred the haunted house. Without consent, the group found themselves in a clearing surrounded by singing toadstools. A rainbow-lettered banner read, Teamwork is dreamwork. A challenge appeared, building a bridge out of kindness blocks. Karlak tried to lift one. It squeaked and said, Ouch, gentle hands only. Lae'zel scowled. This world disrespects physics. A gentle narrator's voice cooed, Remember, friends, no one wins unless everyone smiles. Define wins, Shadowheart muttered. Astarion stacked blocks into a crude barricade. If I can't swear, I can at least fortify. Eventually, Bitsy leapt up, pressing her plush paws together. The bridge assembled itself because even this realm understood that dogs are the true protagonists. The group crossed, uncomfortably congratulated by confetti that smelled like cotton candy and regret.
Footnote 32. Magic bridges built on friendship tend to collapse under honesty.
Next came a meadow full of oversized cupcakes. Each had a single name on top, written in frosting. Vesta's cupcake was pristine. Karlak's was on fire. Astarion's glistened with red jelly in a way that felt deliberate. Will's cupcake sparkled heroically. Gale's one hummed arcane energy. Lae'zel's immediately drew her sword. Shadowheart's was already melting. A chorus of critters sang, "If you don't share, the guilt will grow. So give a bite before you go." Karlak's eye twitched. "If I share, do they shut up?" "Yes," Withers said. "In theory." "Good enough." She ripped her cupcake in half and handed it to Will, who smiled softly. The critters cheered, glitter exploded, and a rainbow formed, spelling out growth achieved.
Footnote 33. Growth often looks suspiciously like compromise.
A golden gate appeared, embossed with smiley faces. Above it, graduation ceremony for emotionally approved adventurers. An audience of plushies filled the stands. A voice announced, "You've learned so much. Tell us what friendship means." Everyone looked at each other. Vesta stepped forward. "Friendship means knowing who you are, even when the story keeps rewriting you." The creatures blinked. One raised a felt paw. "That answer contains nuance. Please simplify." Karlak grinned wickedly. "Friendship means not punching people who deserve it." The sky flickered. Lae'zel added, "Friendship is combat without casualties." The horizon cracked. Shadowheart sighed. "Friendship is tolerating hope." Astarion smirked. "Friendship is letting other people think you care." Gale raised a hand. "Friendship, statistically, is improbable." The ground began to quake. Bitsy barked, tail glowing brighter. Withers lifted his juice box solemnly. "Friendship," he said, "is over. Run." The felt trees melted into paint. The sun peeled off like a sticker. The lamb's smile split into static. The pastel colours drained into ink as the entire realm screamed in rhyme. "You didn't believe, you didn't play, so happy endings fade away." They ran through the collapsing forest, pursued by slogans and sparkles. Bitsy led the way, her plush fur shredding back into holographic light. They burst through the gate as it disintegrated, tumbling onto real grass, damp, imperfect, beautifully unsupervised. Behind them, the world folded into a storybook that slammed shut with a puff of glitter. Vesta coughed. "We're never doing that again." Karlak spat out a gumdrop. "If anyone says teamwork, I riot." Withers adjusted his tie. "Congratulations. You have survived morality in its purest, most weaponized form." Gale looked up. "Where now?" The book at their feet fluttered open. The page read simply, Chapter 9, Once Upon a Time Again. Bitsy wagged her tail and barked once, like a period at the end of a children's sentence.
Footnote 34. Every moral has an asterisk. Footnote 35. Never trust anything that rhymes on purpose.
Chapter 9, Once Upon a Time Again. There are many worlds like this one, but only one that keeps trying to reboot itself. The light came first, dawn breaking across a world that looked exactly as a storybook would describe it. Gold on green, dew on destiny. A castle glittered in the distance. A village bustled with suspiciously cheerful peasants. A dragon wheeled through the clouds on perfect cue. And above it all, the sun rose in iambic pentameter. The party stood on a hill overlooking the scene, blinking in the sudden normalcy. Karlak was the first to speak. "You've got to be kidding me." Astarion sighed. "Ah, yes. Back to swords and sorcery, only now with extra smugness." Gale adjusted his sleeves, looking almost relieved. "Still, it's comforting. Predictable. Formulaic in a way that one could almost admire." Shadowheart gave him a look. "That's what they said about plague doctors." Their clothing had reverted too. Classic adventuring garb. Vesta's cloak shimmered silver at the edges, faintly glowing with leftover narrative energy. Gale's robes once again carried too many pockets for reasonable spellwork. Astarion's leather ensemble had regained its roguish flair. Karlak's armor crackled faintly with heat and impatience. Will's blade gleamed, but the reflection didn't quite match him. Shadowheart's armor carried the sigil of Shah. And something new, a faint halo of rebellion. Lae'zel's great sword gleamed sharper than memory itself. Withers wore a scholar's coat, and Bitsy trotted beside them, once again a dog made of light and stubborn loyalty. It looked perfect. It felt wrong. They reached the town gates. A banner flapped in the wind, declaring, "Welcome, heroes of Baldur's Gate. Destiny awaits." Will frowned. "That's us." Karlak tilted her head. "Didn't we blow that wall up?" Lae'zel narrowed her eyes. "Perhaps we are before. Or after." Shadowheart sighed. "Or stuck in an encore no one asked for." A herald approached, trumpet gleaming, scroll unfurling dramatically. "Behold, the prophecy of the returning seven." He began to read. "When the ink runs dry, and the tales all blur, seven shall walk from the pages' stir. Through rhyme and rule, through love and dread, they'll find the author, or end instead." The parchment burst into flame. The herald kept smiling. "Thank you for your service," he chirped, and wandered off, humming ominously.
Footnote 36. Prophecies are just spoilers with better PR.
They found a tavern. Of course they did. It was called the Probable Duck again. Rebuilt, polished, brighter. Inside, everything gleamed with second chances. A bard sang their exploits in a suspiciously flattering key. Their portraits hung on the wall, smiling slightly differently than they were supposed to. Vesta traced her own painted face. "I don't remember smiling like that." "Because you didn't," said Withers. He was stirring tea with unnerving calm. "The editors cleaned up your edges. A few less flaws. A few more marketable virtues." Gale frowned. "He's rewriting us again." "Worse," Withers replied. "He's editing for tone." Bitsy growled, her tail sparking with glitching light. The tavern door slammed open, though no wind followed. The editor stood there, impeccable as ever, wrapped in light that smelled faintly of polished ego. "Darlings!" he cried. "You've done so well. The arc, the growth, the merch potential." Karlak rose to her feet. "You're the reason we've been yanked through all those worlds, aren't you?" "Of course! I'm crafting a masterpiece." "You mean us," said Vesta, voice low. He smiled. "You? My muses, my miracles, my malleable little archetypes," Astarion sneered. "You could have at least given me creative control." "Oh, I did. You just don't remember signing the contract." Will's hand went to his sword. "No more contracts." The editor sighed dramatically. "You really don't understand. Without me, you're just drafts." Withers rose. His teacup vanished. "And without us," he said, "you're just noise." The tavern trembled. The walls began to melt into parchment. Words scrolled down the beams like blood made of ink. Outside, the sky was writing itself, endless lines of text overlapping. Vesta stepped forward, raising her hand. "You can't keep rewriting people just because you're afraid to finish the story." The editor's smile faltered. "Afraid? I am perfection." "Your procrastination with a thesaurus," she said. Karlak roared. "Get out of her book!" Bitsy leapt into the air, glowing brilliant gold. Pages tore, ink flew. The world began to unravel in a swirl of punctuation and memory. "Stop!" the editor shouted. "You'll lose your structure." "We'll find our own," Vesta said, "even if it's messy." The final page exploded in light. When the brightness faded, they stood once more in the ruins of the tavern, the real one. No rhyme, no narration, no genre trying to claim them. Gale looked around. "So, what are we now?" Vesta smiled faintly. "Unwritten." Astarion adjusted his collar. "I can work with that." Withers chuckled. "And thus concludes another improbable chapter." Bitsy barked once, sharp, real, defiant.
Footnote 37. Every story ends eventually. The good ones just refuse to stay dead. Footnote 38. Freedom is what happens when you stop waiting for the narrator.
Epilogue. The end of the line.
All stories end. Some of them remember to say goodbye.
The dawn that followed was not golden or tragic or meaningful in any grand narrative sense. It was simply morning. A mild, ordinary, beautifully unspectacular morning. And for once, no one was waiting for a narrator to describe it. The tavern was half rebuilt, half resigned. A new sign hung above the door, hand-painted in crooked letters, "The Improbable Rest." It didn't glow, it didn't hum. It just was. Inside, the smell of tea and wood smoke mingled with the sound of lazy contentment. Vesta sat by the fire with a notebook open on her lap. It wasn't enchanted. It didn't whisper. It just waited. She had written the title on the first page, "The End of the Anomaly Chronicles." Sometimes she added words. Sometimes she didn't. She had stopped fearing blank pages. Bitsy lay across her boots, hologram flickering softly between dog and light, content either way. When asked later what Vesta did after saving reality, she said, "I started living in it." Gale had returned to teaching, or at least attempting to. His lectures at the Waterdeep Academy of Theoretical Catastrophes were legendary for ending with small controlled explosions and unsolicited poetry. He built a new orb, not of destruction, but illumination. It glowed brighter when people understood something. He swore it wasn't magic, but no one believed him. Astarion bought a vineyard. No one thought he'd stick with it. He did, because he liked the peace, the quiet, and the fact that grapes, unlike people, didn't ask for promises. He still wore silk. He still complained. But sometimes, when the moon was right, he smiled without practicing first. Karlach runs the forge and gives sparring lessons. She builds things that don't explode, usually. Children from the village come by to watch her hammer sparks into shapes that make them laugh. Bitsy stayed by her side and enjoyed the occasional piling of her joints and scrap metal slag treats. She still swears like a sailor, but only when the kids aren't listening, usually. On the wall behind her hangs a small plaque, "No heroes, just heart." Will became an ambassador between cities and plains, not because he liked diplomacy, but because someone had to be decent on purpose. He still carries the same sword, though it's more metaphor than weapon these days. When asked why he never wrote his own memoir, he smiled. Because good deeds aren't supposed to have sequels. Shadowheart found her peace not with Shah or Saloon, but somewhere in between. She opened a small temple without a name, lit by candles that burned at both ends. Because balance, she said, deserves its contradictions. She still prays, but now she sometimes laughs afterward. Lae'zel returned to the stars. Not to conquer, to explore. Her ship bears a new flag now. Not the crest of Vlakith, but a simple sigil. 2 hands crossing blades and clasping. Her crew follows her not from fear but admiration. When she visits, she still spars with Karlach and insults Astarion for sport. Withers never left. He tends the tavern garden, prunes the roses, and writes footnotes in the margins of everyone else's stories. Someone has to maintain continuity, he says dryly. He still drinks tea that somehow refills itself. No one asks how. They've learned. The Improbable Rest stands at the crossroad of all endings. Travellers come, tell their stories, and sometimes stay for another. Every wall holds echoes. Laughter, arguments, beginnings that once thought they were endings. When the wind hits right, it sounds almost like applause. Vesta closes her notebook. She looks around at her friends, alive, absurd, unfinished, real. "Do you think it's over?" Gale asks softly. She smiles. No story ever really ends. It just learns when to rest. Outside, the sky turns the kind of blue that doesn't need symbolism. Bitsy stretches, yawns, and chases a butterfly that isn't foreshadowing anything. For the first time in a long time, nobody needs to be written.
Footnote 39. The end is not a wall. It's a door politely waiting for you to stop narrating. Footnote 40. And somewhere a duck quacks, probably on purpose.
Well, look at you. You made it all the way to the end. Through the portals, paradoxes, paperwork, and at least 3 existential crises. 4, if you count chapter 12. You've read through every improbable twist, survived the genre shifts, and somehow kept your bookmark intact. That makes you either remarkably dedicated or mildly unhinged. In either case, you're exactly our kind of person. The truth is, stories like this one only finish when someone's still turning the pages. So if you've laughed, groaned, or muttered, "Oh, come on," even once, you've helped keep the whole ridiculous thing alive. Thank you for playing along, for believing in impossible ducks, malfunctioning realities, and the stubborn hope that maybe it all means something. Now close the book carefully. The characters are probably pretending to freeze until you're gone.
If you're still reading this, you're part of the canon now. Sorry about that.